Okay.
I'm McKenzie, one of the second grade teachers.
And I'm Madeline. I'm also a second grade teacher.
You're welcome.
Can you hear us?
Oh, great to see you.
Yes, we can hear you. Are you able to see us and hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good. So maybe you can also go ahead. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, everyone stand and say,
Can you repeat?
Simon, I teach standard 7.
So, and Simon is one of the teachers that's coming over.
Oh, great.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
In this,
I am Davy,
baby.
taking standard 5.
Okay.
Cool.
Alright. I'm Jumbe, standard 8.
Okay.
Standard 8.
Can you repeat?
So Hannah, it seems that we can't hear the teachers that are in the back row. So maybe when they go to ask a question, they could come forward. Okay. And then we have like National Wildlife Center or whatever.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Kondwan, the computer teacher.
He's a technology. Kondwani's
And you're
coming as well.
coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Before,
So we didn't hear what you said, but I know who you are. This is Nelson, Standard 4.
after taking standard 4.
Yep. Okay. Great job.
All right.
All right.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we just wanted to start off by reviewing what we talked about in our last session. So we talked about the 3 different learning styles. We talked about auditory learning, so learning by listening. We talked about visual learning, learning by watching or seeing. And we learned about kinesthetic learning, so learning by doing or moving your body. And your assignment from last time was to do your learning style stations. Did anybody get a chance to implement that in their classroom?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
He's with.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Yeah. The test, so maybe let's hear from Simon.
We're gonna hear from Simon first.
Okay, great.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I had to involve the children, choose which styles they would prefer learning. So here with me is Ruthie from Standard 7. She said she led us through participating and listening. So I asked her why she chose participating and listening. So she said she's always participates in class, and her memory is strengthened when she participates. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I tried with 2 styles. One individual learning, and the other one was the group work, particularly on quiz, where most of the learners prefer working in groups so that those who have got problems might have been assisted with their friends.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yes,
I'm asking you to.
one of the learners as a facilitator to teach to the class, and the class was so alive.
Can you say that again?
I tried to invoke Elena to facilitate a topic on behalf of the teacher. So the class was so active to see that one taking part as a teacher.
I lowered the volume. If you have a question, like you're gonna have to speak up very loud, okay?
So they like to move while they're learning. They're active.
That was social studies.
Oh, social studies.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, coming behind the assistant teachers, so
Oh, good.
the assistant teachers at the background.
We're glad you came. Welcome. So there's all the assistant teachers. So they're the older kids that are there waiting till they get placed into schools.
Very cool.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Nelson. For me, in my class, I have two learning styles. The first one is kinesthetic and the visual one. What I have discovered is that small children learn better when they are involved in touching and watching rather than in listening. So I saw that most of the my learners in my class, they like touching things and what they are learning. So that was what I have learned.
Cool.
Yeah, we have found the same thing with our students here too.
Thank you.
Yes, Leah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Great.
So one of the reasons why we wanted you to do that is it's important to know that students learn in different ways when you plan your lessons, because every student can learn in a different way. And when we plan, we want to make sure that we have parts of our lesson that will incorporate all of those different ways. So, for example, we showed how we would plan a spelling lesson in the information that we sent. And you'll see that in the picture, the students are standing up and their hand is out, and they're actually spelling the word with their hand. So that helps them move and use their body. And they do that after they listen to us spell the word and see it. So they're able to do all three ways. And for the students who learn in one way or another, we're still helping them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another thing that we have found is that when students are misbehaving in class, it's often because they're bored or that something is hard for them in the classroom, and so they'll act out. And so if we are able to use the different learning styles to teach to how they learn, they're less likely to be bored and they're more likely to understand because it's catering to their learning style. And so because we know the way that our students learn, we're able to incorporate those things in our lessons to prevent them from acting out as much. Good?
When we're,
Are there other questions?
yes.
I was challenged. Most of the students wanted I to use their respective styles. How best can we integrate their learning styles in a lesson?
Can you repeat the first part of that question?
All right, I said there was a challenge in my class whereby everybody wanted that I should use his or her learning style so that it will understand better. Now, how best can we integrate all these learning styles classroom situation, like in a single lesson?
I think it's important to try and use all of the learning styles in one lesson, because then you're not having students doing a bunch of different things, which can be hard to manage. So you would start out with one thing. So for example, if we were to teach a spelling lesson, I would write the word on the board so everybody can see it. And then I would say the word so everybody can hear it. And the students would also practice saying it and writing it. Then as a class, they would all stand up and use their body. So if the whole class does every part together, then they're all getting their learning style, but you don't have kids doing different things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really makes sense. Now, is it good that all the children should know how their friends actually learn?
One of the conversations that we have is some people learn better in different ways, so we need to be respectful of that. And while one person might learn by standing up and doing something, another person might learn by sitting and concentrating on it. And the person who needs to be able to read and concentrate on something might not be able to do that if somebody is standing up acting it out. So you need to give them time in the day to do different parts of it, but kind of when the whole class is doing it together. So the whole class will be quiet at one time, or the whole class will act it out as another time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really makes sense.
Do you guys have any other ideas?
Also, just to say, if it works best for you to go to the front table or privacy shield.
Yeah,
moving.
So the next thing that we were going to talk about is how you set up your classroom. And that's one way that helps people use different parts of their learning style and also respect other people's different parts of their learning style. So you'll notice in the picture that there's a student in the far back, and he's actually standing up while he works, because he works better when he's able to stand up and kind of activate his muscles. Then there's students that are sitting down. You'll also notice there's the privacy shield, where it looks like kind of a box almost. And that's to help give other students their own space and keep them away from distractions. Then there's some students up at a front table, and they're moved away from their friends because they work better by themselves. Whereas other students are sitting at a desk. So by giving lots of options in the classroom, you're helping students figure out how and where they learn best. Does that make sense?
Ask if they do that already.
Yeah, but first, on the same setup, what criteria did you follow to come up with this setup in a classroom situation?
So what activity are they doing?
Miss Hawthorne, as far as the students choosing? So we chose the classroom setup as teachers. And we did that just based on our observations of the students, things that they had said to us, and when we did that activity and learned about their learning style. You want to talk about that a
Let's see
little
if they
bit?
understand.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you do anything like this already?
Let's read it.
No.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, I have an observation on the film where my colleague here, Uncle Nelson, talked of kinesthetic style of learning. you find out that you a class, when you're teaching a vocabulary, that there are other learners who don't know how to write, and you want them to write away. But in the same sense, they are good drawers. They can draw something, even a teacher, like nobody's business. And that you don't want to measure that ability in that is learner rather than you want the vocabulary. Then how can you incorporate this one and so that you achieve the success criteria that is intended to be achieved by the end of the particular lesson?
So you're getting that?
I think so.
Okay.
So how can we incorporate their learning styles, but also make sure they're capable of doing what they need to do? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've actually learned that if students experience something in different ways, then it helps them learn it better. So for example, spelling with your arm helps your handwriting when you spell it, because you're sending a message to your brain, this is how the letter is formed. And for that student that likes to draw, you could almost have them draw in the dirt outside when they play and make the letters. If they're doing it in different ways, they'll eventually be able to do what you're asking them to do. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. His kids are older, so I can see where the question is. So if he's
He's worried about exams.
yeah, he's worrying about
So-
getting getting it written on.
So
it.
you're thinking of your older students and they have to do the exams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the point goes is like you have to like standardify the students. Let me take an example from there. Yeah, you give them an assignment where you want to assess a certain style in them or a certain behavior in them, whether they are able to interpret or retell a certain step. You find that one of the students may not be able even to read or to retell a story. Now, the success criteria of that particular lesson might be learners must be able to retell or to understand this story. You find out that one is only good at drawing. So to address one's ability of learning style, you may set to give him that ability of drawing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Then you have that what has been achieved in this one was not intended by the lesson.
So in that example, when he's reading a story and you need him to retell, is that what you're asking him to do? He could draw the pictures. So we say when you hear a story, make a picture in your mind. And so as he's listening to the story, he could think about the picture he sees. You could then have him draw the story in order of how it happened and use those pictures to retell it.
I think that's better.
That's good. I think that's better, is what he said. Yeah,
Hello.
Hi.
because that's a problem. They're having it. They're really
From there, can we agree to say we can also assess them differently?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That's good. Those are good.
Okay.
They're getting. They totally get the concept.
Mathematics assessment. Will you assess someone with a drawing?
We would ask them, that's a great question. We would ask them to answer the problem and show us how they figured it out. Can they show us with a picture, with a drawing? Can they show us with words? How did they solve it?
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's hard.
Yes. All right.
All right. Any other questions
Before we move on.
before we move on? Good? Okay. So
Wait, Tamison has a question. I'll turn him up.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Not a question aside, but I just like the way you've this part. So I think maybe I'm also suggesting that maybe if we can't come up with the best way of trying to assess such kind of a learner, maybe the best option is could be maybe trying the student how best he or she feels that he can explain how he or she got the subject or the content. So maybe the student he himself or herself can choose the best way to present that, and then in so doing maybe we can also grasp what he or she has learned from the lesson. So maybe that's just a suggestion as well.
Perfect. Did you hear that, Hanak?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Think we're going to move on.
So that's actually what we were going to talk about next. So when the students know their own learning style, they are able to ask the teacher for supports in the classroom that can help them to learn best. So for example, we have a few students in our class that are visual learners. So they like to sit closer to the board. So they can ask us, because they know their learning style, can I sit closer to the board? Or for example, what Tamsin was saying, if a student knows that they learn best by drawing, they could tell us that, and we can work to accommodate that when we're either assessing or doing projects in the classroom. Good?
Also, as teachers, we decide for them sometimes.
Yeah. So Betsy was saying that sometimes we also make decisions based on what we observe and what we know about the students as well. Is that good?
So we've kind of talked about this a lot already, but once we've found the learning styles, we try to incorporate it in every part of our day. When we plan our lessons, how we set up the classroom, how we help the kids make decisions about where to sit, and how we give the students opportunities to show us what they know. One of the other things that we try to do when we have all this information is group students together based on the type of learners they are. So you might have a couple different students who like to talk through things to figure it out. And you might group them together so that they can talk through things. And you might have students who like to read and think about something, and you could group them together. So you could do the same types of learners in one group. You could also do different types of learners in one group so they learn from each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
The other thing that we wanted to talk about was movement breaks. Did everybody get the list of movement breaks? He's calling back.
Oh. There you go.
The movement breaks. So we use those because we know it's hard to sit and listen for a long time. And when it's hard to pay attention, you won't learn as much. So we can break apart the day and a lesson with a quick movement break. We've talked about this, that students can only pay attention for a certain amount of time. So by giving them that movement break, you're stopping them, giving them a break, and then they can come back and do their learning. Does anybody have questions about any ideas for a movement break?
To me, it's just a comment on the movement break. I feel like for somebody like me who's not been used to giving movement breaks, it will take a while for me to really remember that now I need a movement break here. Because most of the time I find myself just going without doing these breaks.
Yes.
What are some cues?
You can also notice your students. If your students are kind of squirming around in their seats, or if they're chatting with their friends, that can be a cue to you that they are not paying attention anymore. And you can say, oh, I need to have a movement break now.
Another easy way to do it is when you switch subjects. So when you move from one lesson to another one, if it becomes part of your routine, that helps you remember it and it helps the students. They will probably ask you for it once you do it a bunch.
Yeah. The one thing I've noticed too that you do too, it gives them it gets their energy out, but it doesn't make them crazy and busy.
Yes.
You know, it kind of then also you bring them down, so there's kind of like a flow to it.
Yeah.
Am I right? You know, you don't want to just say go run on the playground.
Right. There's different types of movement breaks, some to bring energy and some to focus. One example of one that helps them focus again is, I don't think it's on here. Should I show them the finger one?
Yeah.
Sure.
We call it finger dancing. And you have all of their students hold their hands up, and you either go up, and the students follow you along. So if I go like this, the students go like this. And then if I switch it up and you go faster and faster, and it's hard for them to do it, so it's fun, but it also gives them a break. And then they don't get crazy because they have to focus on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And seems to be nice.
What? What did you say?
I miss it.
I think that's just.
Okay.
Seems to be nice one.
It would be a nice one. We'll show you more.
So is there any other questions about what we learned today before we go into your assignment for next session?
Do they want to see more movement break options? Or no? We've got some time. Yeah, we have 20 minutes. So
fast.
yeah. So the question is, Hannah, we have about 20 minutes or so to go. So before we talk about your assignment for next time and we end, maybe we take 15 minutes to just kind of answer some more questions, or they could actually show you some of these 3-minute breaks that are listed here as examples. If you want, tell us what you would like to do.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
The 3-minute breaks? Yeah.
Right?
Let's
Sure.
try it.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. So for the first one, if you look on the list of ones that we gave you, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we do this a lot with our kids, usually during a transition time because they are up and moving. And so we'll count down and we'll say 5, they would have to do 5 jumping jacks. 4, they would have to touch their toes 4 times. 3, they would have to hop on one foot 3 times. 2, they would have to maybe walk around their chair twice. And 1, they would have to go high five a friend. And so it gets them moving, but it's also structured so that they're not just running around the classroom, getting their energy out.
And they also have to remember what you asked them to do and how many times. So their body is moving and their brain. The next one, does that make sense?
Yeah.
The next one is mingle, mingle group. And the students spread across the classroom and they just kind of stand around saying mingle, mingle, mingle in like a whisper. And you say a number. So if you said 4, then they would have to form a group of 4 people. And then you would do it again, mingle, mingle, mingle. And if you say 3, they form a group of 3 students. And you can do that however long you want. And you can also manage the volume level. level. You could say only whisper voices, or you could ask them to do it without talking. Can they find a group without talking to anybody? Then they'll have to use their body language to communicate, we have too many, or we need one more. Does that make sense?
So the next one would be for definitely for the younger kids, and that's basically just animal pretend. So you could say pretend to be a lion, and so they would have to make that movement with their body, they would have to make that noise and pretend to be that animal, and that just allows them to be creative, and it gets some of their energy out.
That makes sense?
Now, can you take that again?
Oh, say it again.
Oh, say it again. So this one would be for younger students. It's called animal pretend, and they would pretend to be an animal, and they would make that movement with their body and make that sound with their voice. Good.
Exactly. The next one, we called it just physical challenges, but that's asking them to do anything with their body. So maybe it's standing on one foot, patting your head, or maybe it's standing on one foot, touching your ears, but asking them to do something with their body that they don't normally do, and that might be a little challenging. So you can be creative. That makes sense?
Another one that we like to do is called line up. And so a lot of the time we'll ask students to do this one with their voice off, and there's a certain criteria that they have to line up by. So we might say line up by your birthday, but you can't talk, you just have to use hand signals. And it's actually really challenging for some of our students, and they really have to focus.
Very good. And you could do different things with that. You could do your age or the colors that you're wearing. You can do it however you want. Maybe not, might be hard to do. The skip counting, jump skip counting, you would have them jumping, maybe jumping jacks, and counting by a certain number. So 2, 4, 6, 8, counting by twos. And you can make it more challenging by counting backwards or by starting at a random number, like starting at 46 and going up from there. You could also switch the count in the middle of it. So maybe you start counting by tens and then you count by fives. But all of these, we suggest you do one for more than one time so the students learn it. Maybe you teach one break for a whole week and then they know what that is. Then you teach another one. And once you've gone through a lot of them, you could choose a way for them to pick it. Maybe they pick like a card that has all the names, and if somebody picks it, then they'll do the skip counting. But you only want to teach one at a time for a little bit. Does that make sense?
I just have a question. So what, Hannah, or any of the teachers, what do you do now for breaks? Are there things that you're already doing?
Let's share with them what do we do for breaks.
I'm curious what they're already. And then would they be willing to
Our own ways, how do we do it?
Hi.
Yeah, in fact, for me, I have done one, the first one, the 5, 3, 2, 1, following the jump. Jumping and the dropping 4, 3, 2, 1. Clapping hands 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's very interesting to the kids. And sometimes we do some bends. We bend forward
and up.
Yep.
We bend sideways and up.
Yoga too.
Yeah. So doing so, you make the learners alive again.
Yeah.
And start another.
Exactly. Betsy's shaking her head because she knows there's some of the things that we had talked about whenever she was there. I'm also thinking some of the yoga that Jen and Cindy had taught as well when they were there you could use also.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Anybody else?
Please, I would like to share. As for me, I just told them to do this thing for me. Then I asked, hello students. Then they answer, hello sir. Can you do this for me? Then they answer, yes, we can do this for you.
That's
what I
all.
do.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
We might do that.
Yeah, exactly. Miriam.
That's the
Jump? Did she say jump? No.
Can you repeat?
I take them outside, but
You take them outside.
yes, for high jump.
Oh, for high jump. Yes. Good.
Great.
Hi.
Yeah, I took a risk by taking out the animal pen for the grown-up children because I don't teach the younger children.
Yeah.
So I tried with standard 8 because I had a lesson to do with animal movements. So after that lesson, I asked them to imitate how different animals of their choice move. So they were really excited and they did excellently.
Okay.
So it is that even grown-up children can get excited with the animal of the tail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
That's great. We have about 8 more minutes.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have questions about
Yeah. So let's
All right, so we're going to move into your assignment for next session. And what we would like for you to do is we are going to ask that you guys run a session for us. Similar to what we've done for you, you're going to present to us what you have learned and what you have done in your classroom so far. So you can think about things like what was the most interesting strategy that you learned, or what is something that maybe you want to try but you need more support with, or how are you going to use this information moving forward in your classroom. And we would really like to hear from everyone next session. And so are there any questions so far about what we're asking for next time?
It's clear.
It's clear.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Right. Yeah.
If they have questions in the meantime,
Okay.
tell them.
Yeah, if there are any questions that come up as you're planning for your next session, you can always email Karen and she can get those to us and we can answer them for you.
Anything else they have now that they're curious?
Do you have any other questions or things you're curious about right now?
Probably no. What have been discussed, we just need time to implement. And after observing something, we'll come up with questions.
That's
Perfect.
great.
Great.
Sounds good.
I have one question. What's the temperature there? Because I can see everyone fanning themselves. What is the temperature?
Hot. Very hot. Very hot.
Very hot. So it's a little below 0 here, Celsius. So I'm curious. What do you?
It's cold.
I know. What do you think it is Celsius there about?
No, because I look at it, when you open the window, it was clear, so I thought maybe it's hot now.
No.
Clear, that's right.
Snow.
We still have snow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we're just getting snow. Yeah, I'll show you. All right, I gotta show you. Yeah, let me. Here, I'll show you. I'm walking over to the door. I already showed Tamison. So can you see outside?
And the left.
In the plaid.
Oh.
Can you see? So that's the playground. That's all snow. It's not very much. It's kind of, we don't have as much snow as usual. So, all right, all right. Let me see. All right.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Wait, Tamison. I think Tamison may have had a question. Go ahead, Tamison.
Thank you.
Yes, no, my question was just on the playground because when it snows, then what do you do?
What do you do?
It snows.
They play.
Yes, sometimes they play outside.
You showed me the playground, yes.
Yes. Sometimes yesterday it was very wet snow, so we went inside.
All right. All right. We'll see you soon.
No, thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Awesome.
You guys do a great job because it was
That was good timing.
yeah, the whole thing was. Bye, Tamison. I'm trying to figure out how to hang up.
No,
on,
that
before
was a
you
good
go.
connection. I
Who
think
was
that's our
the
best.
one in
Yeah.
front on the right?
In the plaid shirt.
Davy.
Oh my gosh, she was laughing the whole time.
I know. He
Like
was
leaning in, and the one time
I got a little something for all of you. A little something.
To thank you. Oh, you guys, I mean, I hope you understand how much I appreciate like the effort and the coming in early and the energy you put into. And what I so appreciate about you have it so well organized and it's so concise and to the point. Like you've done a really good job. So I appreciate it. Oh, and I'm recording now.